of your report and the last sentence where you clearly indicate that the modeling process that you followed excludes the possibility of 100% reproduction of the original sound source and the perception of the sound from the listener's perspective. So I understand that.
Yes.
You're saying you used a model, you used averages, and you want to convey the answers to the two questions. That's what you're doing.
Yes.
Good. Now, if we deal with the difference between hearing and listening, you've also dealt with that. You dealt with that at page 3. But what we're dealing with in this instance is listening, am I right?
Well, yes. Yes.
Now, listening includes interpretation, confirmation, and so forth.
Yes.
So a listener would hear a sound, interpret the sound. If there's another sound, confirm a sound, interpret the sound. That's what I understand by listening.
Yes.
Good. Now, I failed to see a date on your report. When did you compile this report?
Was actually towards the end of past week.
Last week.
Yes. It's been an ongoing process.
So when did you start with this whole process of this report?
Gosh, probably, I can't remember exactly, probably just more than a week ago.
Okay, you started with it a bit more than a week ago, and you worked on it, and you finalized it about a week ago.
That's correct, yes.
I see. And you used different scenarios in your report.
Yes.
What was made available for you to create these scenarios?
My lady, I have to understand where the possible sound source could be. In this case, we have 3 different scenarios: in a toilet, bathroom, and balcony. That's the 3 possible sound sources. And then I have to study the actual location of the listener's position. It's 177-meter house and an 80-meter house, and possibly where the window and door locations would be, whether it would have line of sight or not.
But, okay, I understand what you did. What did you use? Did you read the record?
No, I actually went to the site to look at the location.
But that you did last week?
I think, God, I don't remember the exact date now. It was just more than a week ago, yes.
A week
yes.
ago. But you do understand, and I'm sure you were informed, that since the incident, there's been lots of development and new houses built and things at the scene.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. But did people tell you exactly what?
No, I must say that, I'm trying to keep all the information in public out of my mind because I don't know who has been right and who's wrong. I don't know what's been happening, and I'm trying to concentrate on scientific fact of it. So that's really, I use the information at my disposal to analyze the question they're given to me.
I understand that, Mr. Lin, and I appreciate that. I do. The one scientific fact, however, is when you went to the scene last week, it was more than a year after the incident. Mm-hmm. Trees have grown, new houses were built. Did somebody tell you about that? New houses built. What was changed?
Yes, I was aware of that. That's correct.
Yeah, but I want to know, how did you know that there were new houses built?
Because when I went to the site, that's what I saw. And I saw there was new houses put up. I inquired about was there a line of sight or not, and I was informed of that there was new house built in between.
And did anybody sensitize you to the fact that there was growth of trees in this period of a year and a couple of months, that the trees got larger, taller?
Well, it's natural assumption that this part of nature that would happen.
Okay. Good. We have that now. When you went to the scene, did you go by yourself? Did somebody accompany you, or what happened?
I went with one of the assistants of the defense team. Yes.
Of the defense team. Now, the scenarios of a person being on the balcony or in the room, who gave you that?
I have to ask for the information, and was doing the interaction with Mr. Brian Weber, and then I have to find out information what I at my disposal so I can start the analyzing process.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you refer to Mr. Brian Weber, that's the attorney of the accused.
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Now, what I'm asking is, in your scenarios, was it ever put to you that at the at the site of 177 meters, that the bedroom window was closed? Was that put to you as a scenario?
No,
What was the scenario there?
there was no scenario put to me. I have to explore the different possibilities, and therefore I include different scenarios in my report, my lady.
So, nobody told you that the window was in fact wide open?
That the information was not available to me.
Now, you went to the scene. I understand that. I just want to understand. So, if you were taken to the scene at the 177 premises, that's one. Did you go there?
One time, no, I didn't have access to that.
Yeah. So you never had access to the premises that was 177 meters away.
Sort of. However, I was shown a photograph of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have. So you were shown photographs as well.
Yes.
And that all happened now in the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
So you were shown photographs, but you also shown photographs of the premises 80 meters away.
That's correct.
Are they, okay. And were you at the source of the sounds into the house?
I did go to the house of the accused, yes.
Good. Now, if I put to you that at the source of 177, the bedroom window is open, we can exclude all the portions of the model where you took into account that it was closed. Am I right?
Well, in my model, I included both scenarios.
Yeah, but we're now in court and we now have to apply it to the facts, your model, so we can exclude that. The window was open.
If that's what you think, yes.
Okay. Now, in paragraph 5.6, you deal with the ability to differentiate between a male and a female scream. Now, if I read 5.6 and 5.7, I make the following inference. Your view is that you wouldn't think that it's possible to, without exception, be able to identify a male and a female scream.
What I said, yes, one cannot be absolutely certain.
Absolutely so.
Well, reliably certain.
Don't we do that every day?
Yes.
Every day we hear women voices, male voices. I wouldn't go so far as to say every day we hear women scream and men scream, but often we're able to identify that, and we're right. Am I right?
That's correct.
would you concede that more often than not we're correct?
It's all our perception, and nobody can say our perception is all reliable.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, just, Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Lin, you and I, we in our daily lives,
Yes.
we hear a scream, we say, it's a woman screaming. More often than not, we're right.
If you have a visual coloration, yes.
Even if we don't, and if we look more, you would not concede that more often than not we would be able to identify.
I will consider it as common sense, but not reality.
Okay, no, that's fine. We use different terminology in your science field and the law. So, am I right in saying it's common sense that more often than not we would be able to identify a woman and a male's voice screaming? But we cannot say it's absolutely certain.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you happy with the statement I just made?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Then, at paragraph 5.9, you've identified that the typical human scream recorded of between 100 and 120 dB.
Yes.
On this particular night, there was nothing normal about the night. On the States version, the deceased screamed because she feared for her life. That's abnormal scream. Would you just appreciate the States case? That's what we say.
Yes.
That is so. If somebody screams in absolute fear, wouldn't you put it closer to 120 than 110?
I think if we need to appreciate what 120 means. 120 dB is extremely loud.
Yeah.
It's almost hearing the jet taking off at about 100 meters away. And that is actually at an extreme level of human voice.
Yes.
And it's a very slight possibility, but it's a possibility.
I appreciate what you just said. It's at the extreme limits of a person's voice.
Yes.
Now, that you'll reach if you're in life-threatening danger. There will be no hold back. It will be a spontaneous scream.
It's possible,
Okay.
but it's not for me to say yes or no.
Exactly. Now I'm saying, you cannot say that if the state is correct, that she screamed close to 120.
That's a possible scenario.
Possible. But if we take that 10 difference
Yes.
through to your graph at the end,
Yes.
let's just do that.
Sure.
So if we take that 10 difference through, and let's just deal with 177, because between the state and you, as far as 80 is concerned, I think we won't ask you lots of questions about that. I'll be focusing on 177.
Sure.
Okay. Now, if we take that 10
Yes.
through,
Yes.
then that brings us source toilet in the bedroom with the window open to at least 32 dB.
Yes.
That would change it to audible and possibly intelligible.
It's audible. It's possibly audible, and intelligibility. You have to refer to my other description. It's possible intelligible, but it's very much on the lower side.
Okay. No, it's audible and possibly intelligible if we just add the 10 for now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I have
Yes.
that. Good. No. I appreciate that concession. There's one other factor, and that is the possible amplification of the sound at source by the bathroom. The tiles in the bathroom.
I would not say amplification, because this energy doesn't change. It's how much energy came out of the enclosure, that will decrease. Energy did not increase. My lady.
Now, would you not agree with me that hard surfaces, reflections of the sound from hard surfaces like the tiles in a bathroom would amplify the sound?
One got to handle the word amplification very carefully because how we have to understand is the difference between sound power and sound pressure level. What we hear is a sound pressure level at a certain point away from the sound power source. So the energy was produced, assume this in the toilet, will be the same energy and it doesn't go more. Now the tile doesn't make it more, it's just enable more energy to come out of the same enclosure.
Yes.
But when I say, so I need to correct myself, I'm not saying not more energies, more of that energy doesn't dissipate before it come out of the enclosure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the level of the sound that would be audible because of the reflections from the hard surface would be higher. The level of the sound would just be higher.
It's possible, but it's quite difficult to quantify.
No, let us not go to quantification.
Yeah.
Let us just deal with the phenomena of what we have here and where it happened. If we deal with that, then let us do just what you now said.
Okay.
It's possible that the level would be amplified by the hard surfaces.
It's I wouldn't use the word amplification. It's not a correct word in this context.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're the expert. I'm just trying to make my way through this, so tell me which word I should rather use.
Well, the amount of sound you get from a sound source is only available from how much sound power is available at the source. And if you have this no other openings, the same sound power will come out the enclosure with a minimum amount of resistance. And in this case, the minimum amount of resistance is the window. So that's where we take our sound energy from. And when we model this, we took into account the possible sound power involved in the toilet.
Whilst I'm dealing with it, now, if we had the sound of a firearm firing, a firearm that was fired in the bathroom, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where would you put the dB of a 9mm pistol being fired?
I do not understand your question.
What would the dB level be? About 160?
It's difficult to ascertain because I have no idea how loud what pistol and how loud would be.
Okay,
so it's not a question one can answer with absolute certainty.
But would it be possible to establish or to say that if I heard from Dr. Kruger sitting next, Dr. Van Zyl sitting next to me, that it's about 160, would you be able to say I'm wrong? Excuse me.
I have no knowledge of the gun firing at 160 dB. I assume we talk about dBA weighting, and this is not part of the question I've studied. In fact, I was asked to answer the question relating to the question I was asked to answer to.
No, that's true.
Yes.
You're the expert. I'm trying to get as much out of you as I can. So, and I'm entitled to do that.
Okay.
So please deal with the question. Let us deal with it. But just to take this further, the dB of a gunshot, you'll accept, will be higher than that of a human voice.
It is correct.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Now, a human voice and a gunshot that happened at source, let's say, just for argument's sake, there's 20% dB difference between the two sounds.
Okay.
Let's just use that. Now, when we get to the listener, whatever happens to those two sounds, when we get to the listener, there'll still be a 20% difference. dB difference between the two.
Theoretically, attenuation will be the same. However, the perception of different frequencies of each sound source can be different because the sound source have different spectrum characteristics. And how we hear certain sound with certain frequency spectrum could be different to how we hear another sound with different frequency spectrum.
That's hearing, but the dB would be exactly the same. The difference in dB at the same amount difference of the dB that was created at source will be at the listeners.
In a simple terms,
Yeah.
yes.
No. In simple terms,
Yes.
please. I think we're all trying to understand this very complicated
Yes.
science of yours. Then there is the fact that we're dealing with a scream. We're not dealing with a conversation
Yes.
we're dealing with a scream. Now, would you concede that, and I'm just use for argument's sake, and we can carry on with this, that especially a woman's voice, when a woman would scream, there's a tonal character in such a scream. One would expect that.
You're asking me a question come from a common sense perspective, but my position is coming from a scientific perspective. So you're asking me to assume it's a woman's scream, which is already a wrong starting point.
No, it can't be. Why?
Sorry.
I'm asking a question. As an expert,
Okay.
I mean, your duties towards the court, not
Sorry.
me
Yes,
or the defense. So I'm asking you a question. The question is just, if a woman screams, in her voice there will be a certain pitch, and it will have a tonal character. I'm not saying a woman screamed this day. I'm just asking you a general question.
It's commonly known that women has higher pitch voice, and it's a common perception.
Yes.
Yes.
And the fact that it has a tonal character, almost like a musical note.
I'm not sure how you're relating to like a musical note.
Having a tonal character. But let me,
okay.
yeah, having a tonal character. That's all.
Yes.
Are you agreeing with me?
Yeah, tonal character is every sound has a tonal character.
Okay. Now, if in normal background noise, there's background noise going on, sounds of a woman screaming, and I'm just using woman or a man screaming,
Okay.
a scream,
Mm-hmm.
sound with a tonal character, that would be more noticeable because it's different from the ambience, from the sound. You'll hear that.
Yes, we hear different sound due to its different tonal characteristic and different amplitude. So yes, we do hear sound differently from the perspective.
For a tonal sound would be more noticeable.
Yes, because of its the nature of it, the frequency spectrum. Yes.
Now, do you agree with me that the way that one would look at tonal characters, that there's some direction in the SANS 101?
10103,
Yeah.
2008.
Yeah.
Yes.
They deal with how you deal with sounds of tonal character.
That standard is not really a correct reference to be used in this characteristic, because that standard wasn't written for that purpose.
But it deals with determination that you have to correct for the determination of a tonal character in a voice and in a sound.
In a sound with tonal characteristic, and typically it's a repetitive sound, not a single sound.
Okay. So will repetitive screams be the same thing?
If you can scream repetitively with the same level, yes, you can identify that.
But the fact is that in the SANS 10103,
yes.
Milady, It is the measurement and rating of environmental noise with respect to annoyance and to speech communication. It's a South African national standard.
That's too quick.
Yeah, I just tried to identify it. My lady, the SANS it's a South African national standard.
Thank you.
10103 of 2008, my lady. It has a heading, the measurement and rating of environmental noise. With respect to annoyance and speech communication.
With respect to?
With respect to annoyance and to speech communication.
Thank you.
So the only point I want to make, and I'm sure you know where I'm going.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure you know where I'm going, so it would be easy
Yes.
to get there. In terms of this standard, if you deal with a sound of tonal character, you should amplify, well, you should add 5 dB.
The standards were written for the purpose of assessing noise annoyance, and that is typically based on continuous noise source, and it's continually based on noise source that can produce noise pollution and annoyance. And therefore, it is, I'm not certain it's applicable in this context.
But if we have a repetitive scream and we have a scream with a tonal character, why would the 5% added not be applicable? If it's applicable in terms of the standard.
Because what the standard is describing is, typically you're talking about a mechanical plant on somebody's roof or a discotheque who's making a lot of noise, and there's constant noise, and one would be annoyed by the noise for a period of time. And the fact is, the measurement as prescribed in this standard is a time average measurement. It's not measured on impulse. Therefore, that's another reason why that if you're referring to a sound level, under this standard is measured over a period of time, and we take an average value of that. And in this context, we're measuring the impulse, well, almost impulse noise that one cannot average over time. And this is the reason why I would say that it's not applicable.
Yeah, but the 5% added, or the 5 dB added, is to account for audibility. That's why it's added in terms of the standard.
From a noise perspective.
Yes, but because of a certain sound with a tonal character, because that is the sound that you're confronted with, in terms of standard, you have to add 5 dB to account for audibility.
I believe this is academic discussion that is not something that should happen here. However, I disagree with the interpretation.
You wouldn't add 5?
Not in the true sense of understanding what a standard is for, my lady.
I'm not saying you should follow the standard, but all I'm saying is there is a standard saying that if you deal with this, but sounds with this character, and then you should add 5. And why did you not add 5 in terms of what we're dealing with here, with the sound with the same character?
My lady, because the reason is certain, the way the standard is written is for a specific purpose, and if there is a weighting factor or additional error correction factor, it designed specifically to achieve that purpose. And maybe one need to have a different correction factor to deal with this kind of specific impulse noise nature. But this impulse noise is not what's been discussed in this context. And if we are dealing with average noise level over an hour or over 10 minutes, then maybe one can start to appreciate why Science 10103 will talk about it. But in this case, we're dealing with something that's very short. And so I do not believe it's a correct context to apply.
Mr. Lin, but the correction has to deal with the audibility. And that's what we're dealing with, the audibility. And if we deal with audibility, that is exactly what we're dealing with here. The character of the sound, in terms of the 10103, you have to add 5 to account for audibility, and you have not done it in this instance.
Because Science 103 was never part of the tool used for this process. And again, that we are analyzing a real event, we're not analyzing applicability of a standard.
But we're dealing with audibility, and that's it. In terms of a standard, audibility of a sound with a specific characteristic should add 5, and you did not do it. And we're just dealing with audibility. Don't you think it should also apply here?
I still believe it's wrong in correct context.
No, I understand you're stuck with context, but the intention of the sons and of the correction is to account for audibility. Now, in a different context, I agree, but the reason why they do it, why they did it in the sons, is to account for audibility, and that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with audibility.
My lady, I do understand the intention as written in the standard. There are other correction factors can be applicable in different scenarios. So under different scenarios, there could be higher correction factors, there could be lower correction factors. But each scenario is very specific, and I stand by my point that this correction factor as of 5 dB is not correctly applied in this context. It could be, the possibility could be higher or lower, but the reality is that you are using a standard that is used for average scenarios, and that doesn't account for individual incidents in very specific conditions.
Yeah. And you see, the point I'm making wasn't so much saying, why did you not follow the standard? It's, why did you not follow the same principle as prescribed by the standard? That's all. By allowing for the specific tonal character of the scream and the audibility of it. Now, let's do it differently.
Okay.
Did you add anything, any dB, to account for audibility?
I did not apply the correction factor in this case, no.
Why?
Because I did not see the requirement to.
Why not? If there's a standard that you should do it, why did you not do it in this instance? A standard in a different context, but you've now said that the 10103 indicates the standard that you have to use and apply. And why did you not do it in this, even on a 2 dB or something, to account for audibility?
If allow me, if I can explain differently. In this report, I clearly state that subjectivity and audibility is highly variable and subjective. And I established that as a start, and then apply some scientific modeling to come up with some numbers to explain the possible scenarios. And that scenario is based on the foundation of subjectivity and human hearing. And the exercise here is about what can we hear, but however, what can we hear subject to possible different frequency contexts of the source. And the standard is not something I see fitting in this scenario. It's a very specific incident, very specific event. It's not something we can use a typical standard for general conditions. And therefore, I use the argument based on subjectivity rather than the standard. In fact, under different conditions, one can say you can apply 10 dB or correction factor or 2 dB correction factor.
But you apply now?
I apply now because some people were here, some people were not here. And you cannot say this is correct for some people who heard and it's incorrect for some people who did not hear.
You see, my problem is just that. When we get to your conclusions,
yes,
we deal with specific dB numbers. And by saying I didn't apply a correction, affect the numbers. Let us just look. I mean, if we applied 5 as in the standard, I'm not saying you should follow the standard and the standard's applicable in this specific instance, but let us just say, if you applied 5 and we applied the 10 for the high end of the screen, it would have made a significant difference in your graph.
Yes and no, my lady.
It would have taken the first line of your graph to 37.
Even if you do that, my lady, it is 37 dB. I can also demonstrate what it sounds like. In fact, the 37 dB is lower than the ambient noise level in this courtroom at the moment.
But you yourself, sir, said at a 38 dB, line 2, that it was audible and possibly intelligible.
That is correct.
At 38 dB. So 37 dB must be exactly the same. It's audible and possibly intelligible.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm just, you see, I'm testing you on what you have here. And I'm just showing you how a correction would have affected your numbers.
I do agree with you. Yes, 38 dB is definitely audible and possibly intelligible. That's not an issue. There's no question about that.
Great.
Yes.
Now, let us then carry on. And I unfortunately have to just ask if these are the photographs that you've seen. There's an album in front of you. I'm going to ask that we look at photographs 930. And not that one, other album, that one. F, my lady. Exhibit F, photograph 930. Now, were you shown this particular photograph?
Yeah, this is this photograph, yes.
You did. And you accept for purposes of your model that if somebody is standing on that balcony, there would be a direct sight of hearing with the red arrow, which is the accused now.
That is correct.
931 is the next photograph. It's just a close-up of what you'll be able to see, but there's a direct line of sight.
That is correct.
Then as far as the 80 meters is concerned, let's go to that. But I mean, the direct line of sight is quite clear. Can we go to photograph 921, please?
921.
921. If you can elect either the album or the TV screen, you're welcome to either. I think the TV screen is just perhaps a bit more clear. Now, the listener in our scenario would be at 1393, and the source would be where you can see 286 Oscar's house. But that's not what you saw on the scene when you went there last week.
I just want to clarify the 80 meter away. Which one is that one?
193.
193. That's 80 meter away. That's correct. Yes.
But when you went there last week, it looked different.
What
There
do
were
you
houses
look
built right
different?
in front of 193 and so forth.
Yeah, that is correct. Yes.
Let us just go to 936. Now, on that particular photograph, I'm sure you saw that house when you went there.
Yes.
The two positions there that's relevant.
Yes.
The one you can see there with the arrows now, that's a door with curtains, and to the right of it, there's a position that's relevant as far as the balcony is concerned.
Yes.
And you were there, and I'm sure if you turn to 937, it's just a different angle of that particular house. Then 938. 938 is an interesting photograph. That's
Yes.
it's a direct line of sight through that door to the source.
Yes.
Yeah. You've
Yes.
seen that photograph.
I've seen that one. Yes.
Okay. Now, the attenuation you allowed for, can we deal with that now?
Yes.
Now, the window you allowed for 25 dB.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you not say that's a bit much?
It's typically measured. It is assumption, but it's acceptable assumption.
Isn't that for a window that's acoustically sealed, one that's not openable, it's a fixed window that specific estimate is used?
Not necessarily.
Do you have any literature on that? Because if I indicate to you that it is my perception that 25 dB is typically used for a solid window that's sealed.
If I can explain in this way, my lady, that typical domestic window with solid frame, if it's closed properly, it can probably go up to 30 dB if it's sealed properly. I've actually I've measured this kind of scenario in different sites.
If it's sealed, if it's properly sealed.
If properly closed, closed, yeah.
And not sealed.
Sealed, if it is 100% sealed, it can achieve more, depends on the glazing. A typical 6 millimeter solid, 6 millimeter glass can perform probably about 28 dB sound insulation and mid frequencies. And this is depending on how well the frame or aluminum frame is closed or sealed against the structure.
But you took into account that we have a timber frame here.
Yes.
And did you allow for that?
Yes.
What did you allow?
I took that as it can when it's closed, can perform up to 25 dB.
Do you agree that if it didn't seal properly, I mean, I'm just going through all this in detail because that's how you presented your evidence.
Yes,
You work
yes.
with figures. That if it didn't seal particularly well, or wasn't closed properly, it would have allowed less attenuation.
Exactly. Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yes.
And we don't know that. Okay. The same with the door. When you allowed 29 for the door, it didn't seal properly.
Not 29 for the door. Maybe. The 29 is for the entire path of the sound. If it's generated inside the toilet, through the door,
and
through the window.
Okay.
Yes, it's actually the entire process.
Okay.
Pattern.
Okay. Now, again, before I step off from this, again we have a variable in terms of we don't know if the window is sealed properly And if it was closed properly, we don't know.
Yes.
And that would affect whatever attenuation you would allow for
That
the
is correct.
toilet window.
Yes.
Now, if we deal with your conclusions as far as the sound attenuation between the source and listener is concerned on the 177 meters, it starts at page 11.
11.
Yes. If I understand this correctly, you allowed 25 dB for the window and 29 dB for the whole pass through the bathroom window, out the open window.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's more important at page 12. So, for the person standing at the listener side, which I just showed you, I understand all the variables and understand what you used, but I'm just testing your document and your model.
Sure.
Your model, person standing on a balcony would hear a sound of 42 dB if it's on the balcony.
Let me just get to the.
We're still dealing with 177 meters.
Yes, please. Just 177.
Are you referring to page 17?
I'm referring to page 23 or your graph.
Oh, okay.
At your graph, am I
Okay,
right?
at the
In
graph,
interpreting a graph in the
So
following
I
way.
was at page 11.
Okay, no problem. If I interpret your graph, table, is it the table?
Table.
Okay,
Yes.
let's use that word.
Mm-hmm.
A person standing on the balcony, photograph that I showed you, 107 centimeters away, everything you took into account, the level would have been 42 dB.
The highest range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next portion is the 8 dBA. That is if the window was closed.
In the listener side.
Yeah, at the listener side.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the last entry is 22 dBA. That's if the window was open at the listener side.
At the listener side, yes.
And that is on an average of 110 dB as at source.
That's correct.
If we have higher at source, and I have to agree lower.
Yes.
I mean, if it's lower at source, then
It could be lower.
it could be lower.
Yeah.
But if it's higher, it's higher.
Could be higher.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Then you deal with, if I read your table correctly, if you use the word intelligible, it means if the listener would be able to distinguish between a male and a female voice. Or what do you mean by intelligible?
Possible to perceive information.
Perceive information.
Yes.
I'm still not sure. Can you just simplify it?
I do understand that there's a definition I put under 4.8. That's page 3. My lady, may I read it to you? 4.8 intelligibility describes the degree a sound can be understood. Not is a process that involves human interpretation.
Yes. I don't know if I dealt with it, by preparing, and I don't know which questions I've asked. I may forget, so if I repeat the questions, just
Sure.
excuse me.
No problem.
But in whatever we deal with,
Mm-hmm.
if we deal with intelligibility, it depends on the power of hearing of the listener.
Power of hearing and perception.
And perception and the interpretation. But
That's-
power of hearing is a major factor.
Yes, and it's highly variable as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in this instance, we don't have that.
We don't have.
The power of hearing of the listeners.
We do not have. Yes.
Okay. Why I'm asking you about intelligibility is because although you deal with in a heading, the reliability to differentiate between a male and a female scream, you don't in so many words address it in your report anyway.
Sorry, I do not
You
understand.
don't make a finding on somebody's ability to differentiate between a male and a female scream at any of those distances, or do you?
No, I do not.
You don't make a finding.
No.
Okay. And so I have to now take you back.
Sure.
And you were quite correct when you said early on, if I find it. Remember when we started, we dealt with paragraph 5.6 and 5.7,
Yes.
and you anticipated I'm going back there. Well done.
Yes.
What we have in this instance is we have 4 people identifying the sound as a woman's voice. We have no exceptions. Do you know that?
I do not know the number.
But you know that we have no exceptions.
I actually don't know what the exception or not.
No, I'll put you.
No.
You see, what you're saying is you have to take into account, is it correct to assume that without exception all males scream the same? Is it correct to assume that without exception all females scream the same? And I understand all that. What I'm putting to you is, in this instance, we had no exception. Everybody that heard the sound at that time identified it as a woman's voice.
No, my lady, that if he says the 4 witnesses called by the state, that's a correct statement. If he says everybody, that's not correct.
I go as far as saying everybody, my lady, because I'm saying at that time. If Mr. Roo would give me an opportunity, I said at that time. We're talking, my lady, before what the other witnesses, the witnesses called by the defense heard sounds, the last sound, and the male voice. They did not hear anything before those sounds, and I challenge Mr. Which one?
That's going to be a long argument, and we will show to you that he's wrong, because we have telephone calls at 3:15, at 3:16, when the screaming was heard. We know it's the same time, but that's not a debate for now. I think what Mr. Nell can do, he can say the 4 witnesses called by the state, no exception. If he wants to, at this point, wants to make it as a certainty that the witnesses called by the defense heard it at a different time, I say that's very wrong. You cannot do it at this stage.
Just to avoid further arguments, 4 state witnesses made note, all identified it, that they heard screams, not cries. They had screams by a woman. That must be reliable, even for a scientist.
I agree. Sorry, what distance were they?
2 were at 80 and 2 were at 177. They don't know each other. They haven't spoken to each other. It happened independently.
My lady, I cannot say they did not hear the sound. I do believe they heard the sound, but I cannot say were they correct or were they incorrect. It's not for me to interpret that.
Yeah. No, you're right. But they did. So as a scientist, that must indicate to you that they all heard, independent people heard a female scream. So it's possible that what they heard at least was a female.
I would say, if purely from scientific perspective, from the amount of samples available, I can still can't say were they correct or were they incorrect.
Melanie, may I have an adjournment? I don't think I will have lots of more questions, but I would like to confer with Dr. Van Zyl and then carry on with the cross-examination. If the court will allow me to just step towards Mr. Ruan to find out what the rest of the day would look like, it would be easier to say how long this adjournment should be.
I have another witness available.
Milady, then I would need about 10 minutes.
Court will adjourn.